Hey everyone, this is Kyle from After School Studio, and welcome to the first, hopefully, of many progress reports on Cantata. First off, if you've been following the game for a little bit, thank you so much. It means a lot. It means a lot that people have joined the Discord and people have joined the mailing list, and then people have signed up for every little thing that I've sent people. So, thank you all for continuing to stick with this game for a little bit. I wanted to start kind of doing some videos at least at the end of every week, maybe end of every month. It really depends on kind of like how my time goes. But I wanted to kind of keep people updated on where the game is at, what's going on, kind of just keep people in the loop. And it's not always the case that we can write, a cool blog post about the game or something interesting just happening all the time. So I wanted to just make videos to kind of like show people like what the project's doing, where it's at, answer any questions that come up kind of between videos, all that stuff. So I forgot to check if I was recording. I am. That's great. Yeah, so the first thing I think is just kind of telling you kind of what I've been doing. So for people who've been in the Discord for a while, have been following the game, you've probably seen something that looks like this. This is the like alpha demo map, as we've called it. We've been kind of showing this to all sorts of people over the past year or so. It's what the alpha is. If you're familiar with the Cantata alpha, it's a pretty basic map that you just kind of run through the game and you essentially expand across to try to get over here to this area. It's pretty sparse, but it demonstrates at least some of the core ideas of the game. Like you can place buildings down here. You can build supply lines, all this sort of stuff. But the thing is, and the thing that might not be totally visible because I'm just doing this right now, is that it's kind of confusing to play. It's weird to like click this thing and not be able to click here to move. It's kind of weird to, if I move up here and I see like a unit, which I'm not close enough yet, just some of the interaction is kind of strange. And as you can see here, the game doesn't really do anything to tell you about what you should be doing. So what that's kind of led me to is, and what a lot of people have given feedback on in the first versions of the game, is to kind of like reevaluate a lot of how the game is kind of doing certain things, as well as like how I'm showing the player how to do those things. So like a really good example is if I click this building here, this whole UI comes up, which says supply providers, supply lines, and units. What do? You don't know. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to come in here and click this thing, and then you're getting some supply from this base node. So you allocate some supply there, and now that it's allocated, the supply over here has gone down, and it can be a lot. So kind of what I'm doing is rethinking a lot of the UX of the game and trying to figure out how I can kind of better surface some of this stuff, and also address other parts of the feedback that came up, is just like general sort of ambiguity around the game. So kind of rethinking a lot of the sort of like UI and stuff in the game. And so I kind of mentioned earlier a lot of people that have given some early feedback, and I just want to show you guys where that goes. So this is a spreadsheet I've been keeping of kind of general feedback stuff in the game. And what I do is that I basically capture the feedback over here, make some notes on it, try to tag it if I can, and then I basically generate a sort of calculated value of like how valuable that feedback is. Some of that has to do with the sources of where the feedback is coming from. So I actually hid those from this view right now, so you can't see it, but basically it's the score for a feedback source multiplied by the value of the tag. So like something like bad UI, if I go to these feedback dimensions, I rate bad UI pretty important. And then so if I look back in my log here, that whoever gave this feedback about this UI being bad was clearly a valuable source, because the value of bad UI times the kind of like rating of the feedback source has generated a value that puts this close near the top. So gonna probably keep doing this. It's a pretty good way to kind of easily both listen to people's feedback, kind of tag it with other stuff, because some people have duplicate feedback. Like these kind of bad UI things are in some senses all addressed by just fixing the UI. It's not like individual points of feedback. So I've been trying to capture that. So if you tell me stuff about the game, it's like it's going somewhere. It's not just like into the ether. I'm thinking about it. And then after I go here, what I end up trying to do is basically putting it into, if you've done any software development, essentially having kind of like a bug tracker that's just kind of saying where stuff is. And so these tickets in here are kind of more like, here's a good example. This person brought up a question over in this forum discussion. And so I was looking at that and then brought in some of that feedback and made a ticket out of it. This stuff kind of moves through phases, and I'm sure if I do more of these progress videos, we'll talk more about kind of like what's being worked on and what's kind of the target for each month. As of now, major thing I'm working on is, here we go. Oops, iterations. This one, let's fucking do this. So this one is about, just kind of like rebooting some of the UI stuff. So I actually don't even know if I should be cussing in these videos, but there it is. So yeah, so there's feedback stuff. And then I wanted to say, so this bad UI stuff has kind of come up a lot. Bad UI in general, bad UX is definitely a thing. And so I've taken a lot of that to heart and have started like kind of rethinking the Cantata UI. So what I've been doing a little bit for the past week is kind of like pulling in resources from a lot of games that kind of function similar to Cantata, or like plays similar to Cantata, or just like have cool UIs, and started to kind of look at them and what they're doing. You can probably recognize a lot of these games. So this is like Civilization 6, Imperator Rome, Crusader Kings 3, which isn't out yet, but I think is a pretty like sleek UI. Like for all the stuff that happens in Crusader Kings, like this is pretty sparse. But then you get some of these pretty big menus, and then you get this view, which is, I love how this looks, but there's not that much going on in Cantata to necessitate all this noise. I really like this, how they do these kind of like campaign things. So I'm thinking about doing something similar for Cantata when someone talks to you. Whereas right now, I think if you saw it, if I pop back out of here, it just kind of pops up in the side. Oops. Oh, I got a bug. That happens. Nope. Let me restart it. I'll show you an example of how it works right now. Doop. So this kind of pops up here, and it's like fine, but it's very like debuggy. So trying to build like a proper way of looking at text and stuff that comes from people talking to you. Total War 3 Kingdoms, which has got a really, really kind of great UI, and it's kind of sparse too. This is their, I really like this, which is their kind of like campaign select. I'm definitely thinking kind of around this for both selecting commanding officers in Cantata for like picking a campaign, but also if you're just doing kind of a skirmishy multiplayer thing, having something that's kind of like this, along with these sort of like breakdowns of how the CO works, what kind of like what their special unit does, their kind of passives, etc. Here's some more kind of in-game UI, which is looking really good for them. The UI in Total War in general, it's like such a big design space. They do a really good job. Perhaps sometimes there's too much UI. Like this is a straight up screenshot from their game, which is totally ridiculous. It's insane. They also have a really cool view in this game that I haven't screenshotted yet, where basically you're able to press a button and then it like kind of brings up like hot zones around the UI that if you mouse over it like shows you what those things do. And I think that's pretty cool. So, you know, if I have oodles of time, I might pursue that. What else we got here? We got some Unity of Command 2, which is really good. Got some Unity of Command 1. Got a little bit of Out There. They just have kind of a nice, it's almost like comic booky style, but super clear. It's interesting. And one thing about Unity of Command 2, I guess Unity of Command 2 that I also like is the way they do these borders, and the way the kind of units interact with it. So like here you can see, well, it's kind of hard to see. It goes over the terrain, but it even like goes in the dips of the terrain. So they're kind of like rendering some sort of line on here, but then at the same time, the units themselves draw above the terrain. So it kind of goes behind them. So it kind of feels incorporated in the map. And with a lot of the region stuff that I want to do in Cantata, I got to look into kind of how to do some of these lines like this. So it might be something that looks kind of like this, but I'd have to figure out how to kind of incorporate a similar feeling into the game. They also do the sorts of lines here. Good stuff. I do love game UI, so this is just kind of fun to do. Here's some Stellaris. One thing that Stellaris has that a lot of the other Paradox games has is this sort of outliner that I think, because Cantata is about kind of like building a bigger army and building more people and having bases and supply projects and all these things, it can be really hard to track that without a sort of simple way to track it. So I'm really interested in a sort of new UI iteration about trying to build some sort of outliner for the game. I also just like love looking at stuff like this, even if I don't totally understand everything that's going on, because there's just so much going on. Again, Cantata will not be this complicated. Like Cantata has one resource, not 10. What else we got? Endless Legend. I like how they do some of their like production stuff, so that was kind of nice. I hate doing like pop management as a thing in games. Cantata has none of that, but it's not the sort of game that would have it, but it always just feels clunky no matter how you do it. I think even, I don't know if I have a pop management screenshot in here, but it's always a pain. Hearts of Iron 4. One thing I like about Hearts of Iron, their UI is pretty simple despite how complex the game is. But kind of like little unit resources up here, general tabs that you can click to kind of get more information. I also really like these little symbols here. They can really easily show you at a glance where stuff is at. Though they are kind of like at this level, the icon for the thing becomes representative of the thing itself. So you can see here where it's slightly different, where the 3D art of the actual unit is in place with these little units. So, but just looking at kind of how to do sort of at a glance small UIs, I was kind of trying to play with some of that here. So if I hold Alt, I can see kind of some of this stuff. And what this means right now is that this unit has full health and they can still move and attack. So if I move this unit here, then I hold Alt, I can see that they've now they're now moved. So I'm playing with similar stuff like that. Right now it's on a hotkey. I might make it where it's always visible or something. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments of the video, because we're doing these now. So I'm just going to check and make sure I'm still recording. So I've been recording for a long time. Yeah. How long have we been going for? 13 minutes. This is great. Love just telling people what I'm doing. Anything else from Hearts of Iron? I don't know. It's just good. There's no like graphic designer yet at After School. So if I wanted to get some of this more like kind of like gritty graphic design stuff, that'd probably come later. I'm just me, so that's why all the UIs look kind of like, they're kind of sparse in their design. I kind of like it because I think it provides a nice sort of balance to how dense the terrains and stuff look. But if I want to get more flavorful, that's definitely a thing that can be done. Here's some Steel Division Normandy. There's actually not a lot of stuff I like about the UI in this game, but it is a game that's kind of similar, so I thought I might, capture some of that. Heroes of the Storm. Blizzard always does a really great job with all their UI stuff, so even though Cantata is basically nothing like Heroes of the Storm, it is good to look at how companies that have the resources to do really nice UI do UI. So this is kind of more inspiration-y things. I do love this sort of view that we'll see over to the right over here. We look at StarCraft 2. Talk about that in a second. Anything else here? I think one thing that some of this stuff shows is how many screens there are in a game that's easy to forget they have to be designed. Like they have a victory screen, they have an experience screen, and they have an after action screen. It's all just for one battle. StarCraft 2 has probably got some of my favorite like in-game UI. Like something about this vibe here I just love. Got kind of like nice key art. You've got some social layer stuff. You've got news, and you've got kind of general structure here, which is just super simple. It feels like kind of a portal to playing the game in a really nice way. It's kind of separate from like the let's see if I can find this really quick. Like Half-Life 2. The way this UI works is how a lot of like Source Engine games look. Main menu. Like this. Like all Half-Life 2 wants you to do is click like play game, which is great. Half-Life 2 is a great game, but I don't think it necessarily reflects like the fact that a lot of games now have multiplayer components and co-op and like skirmishes and whatever. And obviously Half-Life 2 doesn't have to have that, but you can contrast that with like Doom Remake UI. You start to see some of this stuff kind of like creeping into these new games that are coming out. Doom main menu, Doom main mini. Like here you go. So it's like multiplayer campaign snap map stuff. So there's more's going on here because games have changed. So I think that StarCraft did a really good job of starting to, organize this in a meaningful way. It makes it easier to kind of navigate. So I like a lot of that. Here's Mutant Year Zero. Some of this stuff is cool. I like this sort of like segmented health bar thing here, especially because units in Cantata will have like health, but they're not going to have like some insane number that's hard to reason about. So I've definitely thought about doing kind of more like trying to segment stuff where a segment is more appropriate, because like if this unit gets attacked, this unit has like 10 health or something. I don't actually remember the number. But looking at this health bar, it's not clear that it has like 10 health. It might have 100 health. If it gets attacked with someone who does 1 damage, how far down is that going to go? You're not going to know. So I want to do more kind of what I'm doing here with the AP of a player and kind of make stuff more segmented so it's easier to reason about. And I think that Mutant Year Zero does a good job of that. It also kind of shows a similar thing about action points for movement or attacking. Here's just Destiny UI. Destiny just has some cool UI, like some sans serif font stuff. So that stuff's cool. This is XCOM, this is XCOM the first person shooter or the third person shooter. This isn't actually, or Xenonaut. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was the one that was like, it got kind of usurped by the fact the new XCOM Enemy Unknown came out. But there's some cool stuff in here. I love some nice bars, if you can tell by the Cantata UI. And here's just a screenshot from XCOM 2, whose UI is like pretty simple. I think that's because a lot of the complexity is not in there, but it's in the XCOM 2 unit UI. It's in all of this stuff, which is more complicated. So you do all of your UI stuff in here, and then the game is just kind of like you attack someone, you right click to attack, and it's much easier. So all that to say, collecting a lot of references on games. I didn't realize I was going to go through a UI review, but we did it. And then I started trying to put together like just this crazy, like exquisite corpse of possible UI stuff for Cantata. So the game will definitely like not look like this, but this is just pulling in some things that I think are interesting and kind of compositing them over what the game looks like. So I think having something like a mini map makes a lot of sense, especially as you're moving around, having sort of different views. So views that show you your supply, views that show you kind of like where your units are at, views that show you like which regions you own and which regions are in contention. That sort of stuff would be really good here. I'm pulling in just examples of tooltips. I think like better calling out supply depots would be really important. You could see here I'm pulling in some of that sort of segmented health stuff. This is from Unity of Command. So just playing with ideas around this, playing with sort of like tooltip ideas. So I think this is from Hearts of Iron, and they do a cool thing here where they basically show you the unit stats on the hover. So if I mouse over this, what I see is I can't really see if can I pause this? Yeah. So if I pause this here, I can see that these are the two things it can do, and this is the tile's vision cost and the tile's move cost, but I'm not actually seeing what the player drone's attack or anything is. So this brings that up kind of right there on mouse over, which is kind of nice if you're trying to remember, like, so you don't have to like commit to a move before attacking something. You can kind of see like, oh, I can do this much damage again just to check. Kind of related to that is having like a better sort of like unit UI in general. So if I'm clicking a unit, instead of having, my cat has appeared. Instead of having this sort of, this UI that pops up here like this, having something that's a little more descriptive, and being able to, something that looks more like this, but for a specific unit. Additionally, that means kind of like breaking out some of this other UI stuff that's always been kind of dangling and making it more about having tabs inside of a single unit's UI. So I want to do something like that, which is what this is. I want to have, just keeping in mind the need for like an objective section to kind of show where objectives need to be. Here's some UI references again. This is from Destiny. This is the tooltips on Total War, which I think are pretty cool. I like this sort of at a glance view of a number, and then when you drill into it, you actually see sort of the breakdown of where that number comes from, which is kind of represented with some of the civilization stuff I pulled in up here. This UI up here kind of becomes central. This would have a picture of your commanding officer, how much AP you have left, your experience, as well as how much supply you have, what turn it is, and all that stuff, kind of having up here at a glance. Whereas right now, it's kind of up here, but it's kind of up here, and just kind of consolidating a lot of that into the same thing. Other stuff, I guess the other two things are like, again, kind of that, thinking of that sort of outliner situation vibe going on over here. I don't know what that would look like for Cantata. There are regions, and so those kind of serve as like a really natural breakdown of showing what units are in what regions, which is kind of nice. And I can make it where if you like clicked a region, you pop to it, and same thing for units. Also, it's nice because it potentially shows you the progress of supply projects in here. So instead of having to like search the map or just rely on notifications to see that something is done, you can check the status here and easily pop around. So that'd be cool. And then this is sort of like, this is the civilization kind of intern section, but having a bigger intern thing here saying like, oh, units can still do stuff. Oh, you have this much AP left. Oh, you have no AP left. Doing that sort of thing. So this is kind of a lot of where I'm thinking right now, and still kind of thinking about it and trying to iterate upon it. The next step would probably be starting to kind of block it out with like general shapes and stuff. So coming in here and saying like, oh yes, this will be the CO, and then, you know, this will be the button to click to build, and then this will be the button to click to look at supply, and then this will be and then once that gets sort of translated into something that's usable, starting to move to implementation. So I don't know when that's going to happen. But I mean, it's happening soon, but the speed in which it happens is always the issue. I was also playing around with some more main menu stuff. So right now, the main menu is like just super, super alpha. And so I want to get something that looks slightly more presentable. So I'm kind of playing around with something. Here's that StarCraft thing. Kind of more options up here. The name, news, campaigns, whatever. This could kind of cycle out and animate. And then this is kind of like your main heading up here. Just spending some time doing that. Is there some other options? And kind of I was working with potential options for doing UI. So yeah. So that's like mostly where I'm thinking of. I can talk about some other stuff. I'm gonna be at GDC. So if you're at GDC 2020, I'm going to probably get there a few days before, and I usually leave a few days after. So if you're interested in talking to me about Cantata, come find me, hit me up on Twitter or the forums or Discord and say you want to meet up. I'd love to talk to people about my game. And then the other thing I think that's important to say is that, so on the Discord, like a while back, we did... I kind of sent out this like alpha survey to people to say, hey, let me know kind of like about you in the alpha. And there's a lot of like really good feedback on it. And I feel like I didn't really follow up. That was in September, and I haven't really addressed a lot of the alpha stuff since then. And so I think in kind of the spirit of being more open, I'm basically just going to give everybody in here alpha access. So I'm going to send you an email. I'll tell you how to download it. And yeah, I just want people to play it. It's like, it's weird because it's a sort of thing where the game is I'm like kind of past where the game is at. So you'd be getting some version of what you're seeing here. And I've already got enough feedback to kind of like work from what I've heard from people saying about this thing. But I think just in terms of like upholding my promises to the community, like I want to get you the game so you can just play it and click around and see what it's like. And I think give me some feedback, but more or less, I think just like letting you know that I want to be your collaborator and kind of like helping define what this project is, but also really interested in people helping kind of shape it as it grows. So excited to give it to people, excited to have people play it. I want to just you've not been forgotten. I wanna like let people know that I care about all the stuff that you guys sent me. So thank you so much for that. And I think with that, I'm gonna end the video. That ended up being longer than I was expecting, but I guess I have a lot to talk about. So it was cool to talk about it, and I'm excited to keep kind of doing these. Like I said, I don't know if these are going to be every week or like once a month, but for now, you have this one to work on, and I feel like it's almost 30 minutes long. So that's like a good chunk of Cantata content. So let me know if you like this. Let me know if you want to like see anything changed, or like if there's stuff you want to see in the game or want to have me talk about. That's totally fine. Happy to talk about kind of anything in the game as kind of get this thing going. So yeah, thanks for watching so much, and I look forward to talking to you on the Discord. Thanks for watching.